Hi, I'm Vanessa from SpeakEnglishWithVanessa.com. Are you ready to read a story with me? Let's do it. You're invited to story time with my 3-year-old son, Theo. I'm going to be reading him a classic story, Mike Mulligan and His Steam Shovel. It's from 1939, and whenever we encounter new vocabulary that I think would be useful for you, I'm going to stop and explain it to you so that you'll be able to add it to your vocabulary. If you enjoy reading in English or you'd like to start reading in English, I'll put a link in the description to my top children's books in English, top books for beginner adults in English, and also top books for intermediate and advanced adults in English. Check out the link in the description so that you can continue reading in your own free time. All right, are you ready to get started? Let's read. All right, we're going to read Mike Mulligan and His Steam Shovel, story and pictures by Virginia Lee Burton. Are you ready, Theo? Are you ready, Freddie? All right. Mike Mulligan had a steam shovel, a beautiful red steam shovel. Her name was?
Mike Mulligan.
Mike Mulligan. Mike Mulligan is the man. Do you remember what his steam shovel's name is?
What?
Marianne.
Marianne.
That's right, Marianne. Mike Mulligan was very proud of Marianne. He always said that she could dig as much in a day as 100 men could dig in a week, but he had never been quite sure that this was true. You heard the sentence, she could dig as much in a day as 100 men could dig in a week. This is a wonderful comparison expression, as much as. We're comparing what Marianne can dig and what 100 men can dig. We could also insert the word dirt here, but it's implied, so they've taken it out. You could say, she could dig as much dirt in one day as 100 men could dig in a week, but we don't need to say the word dirt. It's kind of understood. A steam shovel usually digs dirt. Another example is, I drank as much tea as my dad. Let's continue. Mike Mulligan and Marianne had been digging together for years and years. Mike Mulligan took such good care of Marianne, she never grew old. It was Mike Mulligan and Marianne and some others who dug the great canals for the big boats to sail through. It was Mike Mulligan and Marianne and some others who cut through the high mountains so that trains could go through. You heard Mike Mulligan took such good care of Marianne. This word such is often used for emphasis. Wow, that was such a good dinner. Why would he say such a mean thing to you? Let's continue. It was Mike Mulligan and Marianne and some others who lowered the hills and straightened the curves to make the long highways for automobiles. Do you know what automobiles are?
What?
It's cars. It's kind of an old-fashioned way to say cars. It was Mike Mulligan and Marianne and some others who smoothed out the ground and filled in the holes to make the landing fields for the airplanes. And it was Mike Mulligan and Marianne and some others who dug the deep holes for the cellars of the tall skyscrapers in the big cities. When people used to stop and watch them, Mike Mulligan and Marianne used to dig a little faster and a little better. The more people stopped, the faster and better they dug. Some days they would keep as many as 37 trucks busy taking away the dirt they had dug. You heard the more people stopped, the faster and better they dug. I actually devoted an entire English lesson to this advanced sentence construction with the. You can check it out up here. But just for a quick review, we have an action. The more people stopped. So people stopping is the action. And then we have the result, which is the faster and better Mike and Marianne dug. So we have an action with a result. But if you'd like to use this in a deeper way, feel free to click the link up here and dive into it. All right, let's get back to our story. Then along came the new gasoline shovels, and the new electric shovels, and the new diesel motor shovels, and took all the jobs away from the steam shovels. Mike Mulligan and Marianne were very sad. Were you happy? Silly boy. You heard, and then along came the new gasoline shovels. This phrasal verb, along came, can also be used in the inverse. Then came along the new gasoline shovels. We use this phrasal verb when something big or new is appearing or being invented. For example, cassette tapes were pretty popular
Then along came CDs and MP3s. Cassette tapes were pretty popular. Then came along CDs and MP3s. Great. Let's get back to the story.
And all the other steam shovels were being sold for junk or left out in old gravel pits to rust and fall apart. Mike loved Marianne. He couldn't do that to her. He had taken such good care of her that she could still dig as much in a day as 100 men could dig in a week. At least he thought she could, but he wasn't quite sure. Everywhere they went, the new gas shovels and the new electric shovels and the new diesel motor shovels had all the jobs. No one wanted Mike Mulligan and Marianne anymore. Then one day, Mike read in a newspaper that a town of Popperville was going to build a new town hall. "We're going to dig the cellar of that town hall," said Mike to Marianne, and off they started.
You heard, "We are going to dig the cellar of that town hall," Mike said to Marianne, and off they started. This phrasal verb to start off can also be used in the inverse, off they started, or and they started off. It generally means that you are starting some kind of journey. So we might say, "We started off our road trip by listening to some music." Great. Let's get back to the story.
They left the canals and the roadways and the highways and the airports and the big cities where no one wanted them anymore and went away out in the country.
You heard, "No one wanted them anymore." I often see this mistake with English learners that instead of using a negative and a positive, "no one wanted them anymore," no one is the negative, anymore is the positive. Instead of using a negative and a positive, I see English learners often using two negatives. No one wanted them no more. But in English, this is called a double negative, and it is incorrect, and it is also extremely confusing because in English, two negatives makes a positive. So if you say, "I didn't eat no carrots," this actually means that I ate carrots because there's two negatives, didn't and no means it's so confusing in English. So make sure that when you're using this, you use a negative and a positive. Let's look at another quick example. No one ever has spoken all of the languages in the world. Here we have a negative, no one, and then a positive, ever. No one ever has spoken all the languages in the world. You cannot say no one never has spoken all the languages. It is very confusing. All right, let's get back to the story.
They crawled along slowly up the hills and down the hills till they came to the little town of
Popperville.
That's right, Popperville. When they got there, they found the selectmen were just deciding who should dig the cellar for the new town hall. Mike Mulligan spoke to Henry B. Swap, one of the selectmen. "I heard," he said, "that you are going to build a new town hall. Marianne and I will dig the cellar for you in just one day." "What?" said Henry B. Swap. "Dig a cellar in a day? It would take 100 men at least a week to dig the cellar for our new town hall." "Sure," said Mike, "but Marianne can dig as much in a day as 100 men can dig in a week," though he had never been quite sure that this was true. Then he added, "If we can't do it, you won't have to pay." Henry B. Swap thought that this would be an easy way to get part of the cellar dug for nothing. So he smiled in a rather mean way and gave the job of digging the cellar of the new town hall to Mike Mulligan and Marianne.
You heard, "It would take at least a week for 100 men to dig our cellar." It would take. This is a hypothetical situation. We often use the word if in these types of sentences. If I ate cookies every day, I would gain weight. This is a hypothetical situation, so the word would is essential. All right, let's continue.
They started in early the next morning, just as the sun was coming up. Soon, a little boy came along. "Do you think you will finish by sundown?" he said to Mike Mulligan. "Sure," said Mike. "If you stay and watch us, we always work faster and better when someone is watching us." So the little boy stayed to watch. Then Mrs. McGillicuddy, Henry B. Swap, and the town constable came over to see what was happening, and they stayed to watch. Mike Mulligan and Marianne dug a little faster and a little better. This gave the little boy a good idea. He ran off and told the postman with the morning mail, The telegraph boy on his bicycle, the milkman with his cart and horse, the doctor on his way home, and the farmer and his family coming into town for the day, and they all stopped and stayed to watch. That made Mike Mulligan and Marianne dig a little faster and a little better. They finished the first corner neat and square, but the sun was getting higher.
You heard they came over to see what was happening. This is a lovely phrasal verb, to come over. You might say that during the lockdown, no one came over to my house. It just means to arrive at my house. No one came over to my house. If you'd like to see 7 expressions using the word come, check out this lesson that I made up here to expand your vocabulary. All right, let's get back to the story.
Clang, clang, clang! The fire department arrived. They had seen the smoke and thought there was a fire. Then the little boy said, "Why don't you stay and watch?" So the fire department of Popperville stayed to watch Mike Mulligan and Marianne. When they heard the fire engine, the children in the school across the street couldn't keep their eyes on their lessons. The teacher called a long recess, and the whole school came out to watch. That made Mike Mulligan and Marianne dig still faster and still better. They finished the second corner neat and square, but the sun was right up in the top of the sky.
We're going to be talking about 2 expressions that you heard on this page. The first one is the sentence, "Why don't you stay and watch?" This expression, "why don't you," is a polite but very direct suggestion. It's no problem to use this with friends, but I wouldn't really recommend using it with your boss because you don't really want to tell your boss what to do. "Why don't you look at this report?" It's a little too pushy, but with friends it's no problem. "Why don't you stay for dinner? I'm making some soup and I would love to share it with you. Why don't you stay?" But what happens if we use this phrase with a harsh tone of voice? "Why don't you ever pick up your socks?" Ooh. All of a sudden, it's not a polite suggestion. Instead, it's an accusing tone of voice. "Why don't you ever pick up your socks?" So you can use this "why don't you" expression in a polite way, just to make a suggestion, or in a harsher way, depending on the tone of your voice. So make sure that the tone matches what you want to say. The second sentence that I want to talk about from this page is the children in the school across the street couldn't keep their eyes on their lessons. To keep your eyes on something means that you're focusing on something, but it's often used in the negative, just like it was in this sentence, to not keep your eyes on something. It means you can't focus. They couldn't keep their eyes on their lessons. For example, when my husband is watching TV, I can't keep my eyes on my book. It's hard for me to focus on my book when the TV is on. But what happens if we change the last word of this phrase? What if instead of "to keep your eyes on something," we say "to keep your eyes off something"? Ooh. Suddenly, it has the opposite meaning, that you can't stop focusing. Let's look at an example. The children couldn't keep their eyes off of Mike Mulligan. This means that they wanted to focus on Mike Mulligan. Hopefully, you can't keep your eyes off of this lesson. You want to keep watching it. Or we might say, "I can't keep my eyes off the TV when my husband is watching it." We've got some lovely phrases on this page. All right, let's get back to the story.
Now the girl who answers the telephone called up the next towns of Bangerville and Bopperville and Kipperville and Copperville and told them what was happening in Popperville. All the people came over to see if Mike Mulligan and his steam shovel could dig the cellar in just one day. The more people came, the faster Mike Mulligan and Marianne dug. But they would have to hurry. They were only halfway through and the sun was beginning to go down.
You heard the sun was just going down behind the hill. We could also say the sun is coming up. We use these 2 phrasal verbs, the sun is going down, the sun is coming up, on a regular basis. You can also say the sun is rising in the morning, or the sun is coming up in the morning. Or you might say the sun is setting at night, the sun is going down at night. All of these are used commonly in daily conversation.
They finished the third corner, neat and square. Oh boy, never had Mike Mulligan and Marianne had so many people to watch them. Never had they dug so fast and so well, and never had the sun seemed to go down so fast. "Hurry, Mike Mulligan, hurry, hurry!" shouted the little boy. "There's not much more time." Dirt was flying everywhere. The smoke and steam were so thick. that the people could hardly see anything. But listen. Bang, bang, crash, slam, louder, louder, faster and faster. Then suddenly, it was quiet. Slowly, the dirt settled down, and the smoke and steam cleared away, and there was the cellar all finished. 4 corners, neat and square, 4 walls straight down, and Mike Mulligan and Marianne at the bottom, and the sun was just going down behind the hill. Hooray! Shouted the people. Hooray for Mike Mulligan and his steam shovel. They have dug the cellar in just one day. Suddenly, the little boy said, "How are they going to get out?" "That's right," said Mrs. McGillicuddy to Henry B. Swap. "How is he going to get his steam shovel out?" Henry B. Swap didn't answer, but he smiled in a rather mean way. Then everybody said, "How are they going to get out?" "Hi, Mike Mulligan. How are you going to get your steam shovel out?" Mike Mulligan looked around at the 4 square walls and the 4 square corners, and he said, "We've dug so fast and so well that we've quite forgotten to leave a way out." Uh-oh. Nothing like this had ever happened to Mike Mulligan and Marianne before, and they didn't know what to do.
You just heard nothing like this had ever happened to them before. Does this sentence construction sound familiar? I wanted to review it because it is essential. We have a negative word, nothing, and then later in the sentence we have a positive word, ever. Nothing like this had ever happened to them before. I hope that this helps to reinforce this concept. All right, let's go back to the story.
Nothing like this had ever happened before in Popperville. Everybody started talking at once, and everybody had a different idea, and everybody thought his idea was the best. They talked and they talked and they argued and they fought till they were worn out, and still no one knew how to get Mike Mulligan and Marianne out of the cellar they had dug. Then Henry B. Swap said, "The job isn't finished because Marianne isn't out of the cellar, so Mike Mulligan won't get paid." And he smiled again in a rather mean way. Now the little boy, who had been keeping very quiet, had another good idea. He said, "Why couldn't we leave Marianne in the cellar and build the new town hall above her? Let her be the furnace for the new town hall, and let Mike Mulligan be the janitor. Then you wouldn't have to buy a new furnace, and we could pay Mike Mulligan for digging the cellar in just one day."
You heard the little boy who had been keeping quiet had another good idea. This expression, to keep quiet, means to remain quiet. We often use the word keep to talk about something that's continuing, to keep quiet, to stay quiet or remain quiet. You might also say, "I can't keep quiet anymore. I need to tell the world that I love you." Do you notice also in this sentence, we are really emphasizing this point, the negative and the positive words. I can't, that's a negative word, keep quiet anymore. Any is a positive word. So here we have a negative and a positive. I can't keep quiet anymore. I need to tell the world that I love you. All right, let's go back to the story.
"Why not?" said Henry B. Swap, and smiled in a way that was not quite so mean. "Why not?" said Mrs. McGillicuddy. "Why not?" said the town constable. "Why not?" said all the people. So they found a ladder and climbed down into the cellar to ask Mike Mulligan and Marianne. "Why not?" said Mike Mulligan, and so it was decided, and everybody was happy.
You heard, "Why not?" said Henry B. Swap. Even though this seems like a negative question because there's the word not, really it's just another way to say sure. It really implies, I don't see a reason why we shouldn't do it, so okay, why not? They built the new town hall right over Mike Mulligan and Marianne. It was finished before winter. Every day the little boy goes over to see Mike Mulligan and Marianne, and Mrs. McGillicuddy takes him nice hot apple pies. And Henry B. Swap spends most of his time in the cellar of the new town hall listening to the stories that Mike Mulligan has to tell, and smiling in a way that isn't mean at all. Now when you, Theo, and you, Freddie, go to Popperville, be sure to go in the cellar of the new town hall. There they'll be, Mike Mulligan and Marianne, Mike in his rocking chair smoking his pipe, and Marianne beside him warming up the meetings in the new town hall. The end. I hope you enjoyed this story of Mike Mulligan and his steam shovel, and also the added vocabulary that you can learn from even a simple kid's story. I think my 3-year-old doesn't quite understand why Marianne isn't needed anymore as a steam shovel and why she has to become a furnace, Someday he'll understand that. It's okay. He just likes this story because there are construction trucks in it. So if you would like to check out some other kids' stories or books for adults that I recommend, make sure you check out the link in the description so that you can continue reading in English. And now I have a question for you. What kind of books did you like to read as a child? Do you have any children's book recommendations? I'd love to check out books for kids from around the world. It would be quite interesting to me, and maybe my kids would like it too. Well, thanks so much for learning with me, and I'll see you again next week on Friday for a new lesson here on my YouTube channel. Bye!
Theo's getting paid for helping with my YouTube channel, with my business. What am I gonna pay you with? Am I gonna give you money?
Tell
I'm gonna give you some
chocolate.
I'm gonna give him a little piece of chocolate for helping me with this video.
The next step is to download my free ebook, 5 Steps to Becoming a Confident English Speaker. You'll learn what you need to do to speak confidently and fluently. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel for more free lessons. Thanks so much. Bye.